All right. I hope you had a good weekend. I had a great weekend. And I want to address people, evangelicals who voted for Joe Biden, who may be experiencing a little bit of buyer's remorse right now. I have to believe that there are people like that. Because on the one hand, like this isn't a good opportunity for me to say I told you so, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to resist the urge to completely destroy and go thermonuclear on evangelicals who are upset about Joe Biden and some of the stuff that he's been doing the last couple of months and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm also going to resist the urge to assume that everybody is kind of like this guy. This guy is he's a Justin Giboney. He's from the AND campaign, a Democrat evangelical who's pretending here to cry some crocodile tears about, oh, alas, Joe Biden is a progressive, alas. Like, I don't believe Justin. I believe Justin is a political operative. I believe Justin is a liar. However, I don't believe that everyone that Justin has influenced is a liar. I believe that Justin is speaking, and he's not telling the truth here in this video. But I believe that people listening to him actually do feel the way Justin is expressing here. And so I feel bad for those people, and I want to extend a little bit of an olive branch to those kinds of people. If you're an evangelical who voted for Joe Biden, this video is for you. Yeah, guys, you should have known better. I'm not going to say I told you so, but I am going to say that you were a little bit naive. And I know that's going to upset you. That's okay. I've been told that I've been naive in the past, and I have been naive in the past on a number of different things. And there's two options. When you realize that you've been bamboozled, when you realize that you've been tricked, duped, flim-flammed, scammed, all that kind of stuff, you've got two options. One, you can continue being scammed and put your head in the sand like an ostrich. Do ostriches really do that? I don't even know if ostriches really do that, but when I was a kid, I knew that ostriches put their head in the sand to pretend things didn't exist. You could do that, or whether or not ostriches do it for real or not, or you can learn from your mistakes. And I would suggest that the best thing for a Christian to do is to learn from their mistakes. So I'm going to read a letter from a group that calls themselves Pro-Life Evangelicals for Joe Biden. This is a letter written by two social justice warriors. So I'm going to read it and respond to it. I'm going to do it in a gracious way. But what I really want from you, if you voted for Joe Biden and you're an evangelical and you really didn't know what Joe Biden was about, I believe you, but I want to help you to come out of this, because it's not the same thing as voting for a Republican that ends up doing bad things, and I'm going to explain why. Now, I'm probably never going to vote again, FYI, so I'm not saying you have to vote. What I am saying, though, is that don't be fooled by the Democrats again. They're not very good tricksters, and I think you need to really consider how it was you were fooled by an obvious scammer. That's something you need to consider. So here's this Pro-Life Evangelicals for Biden letter, an open letter on the American Recovery Act. Richard Mao and Ron Sider, these are notorious old-school social justice Christians. They're both false teachers. There's just no question about it. And if you are interested in learning a little bit more about Ron Sider, John, and Richard Mao for that matter, John Harris wrote a great book about social justice. What's the title? I should have been prepared for this. Hold on. Oh, Social Justice Goes to Church. That's what it's called. Check it out on Amazon, or better yet, buy it directly from John. Social Justice Goes to Church to find out a little bit more about these guys. But anyway, listen to this letter. I think this is just fascinating. He says this: "We are very disappointed about the COVID-19 relief package's exclusion of the Hyde Amendment, a long-standing bipartisan policy that prevents taxpayer funding for abortion. We're even more upset that the Biden administration is supporting this bill. As pro-life leaders in the evangelical community, we publicly supported President Biden's candidacy with the understanding that there would be engagement with us on the issue of abortion, and particularly the Hyde Amendment. The Biden team wanted to talk to us during the campaign to gain our support, and we gave it on the condition that there would be active dialogue and common ground solutions on the issue of abortion. There has been no dialogue since the campaign." Guys, this is the thing. You should not have been scammed by someone like this. I know that, people said a lot of nice things about how, Democrats always limit the number of abortions and stuff like that. But if you were part of this negotiation where you'd publicly support Biden for an open dialogue on abortion, you're negotiating with mass murderers. You don't do that. You don't negotiate with a psychopath like that. They're saying, look, if you vote for me and put me in power, I know I'm like slaughtering tons of babies right now, but like we'll totally have a dialogue about it. Like that shouldn't be on the table for an honest Christian. Like, you shouldn't be fooled by someone who's currently killing babies. You have no moral character if you're saying that it's okay to kill your own child. You have zero moral character. So to get a promise from someone with zero moral character and then to believe that promise, you have to be supremely naive to do that. I would argue that there's a very good chance you actually don't believe that abortion is killing a human being, because if you had someone that was killing human beings every day, all day, publicly, and proud of it, and actually saying things like, yeah, it should be a constitutional right and stuff like that to kill human beings, if that's what you, and these are innocent human beings, mind you, they haven't done anything worthy of death for the killing. And then they say, okay, look, give me 4 years in office, and I promise we'll have a dialogue about the fact that I love to kill babies. Like, if somebody says that to you, don't believe them. You don't have to suspend reality that long. Guys, there's no honor in being duped in that way, especially considering the fact that they also simultaneously were saying to other people about how they're going to defend abortion with everything they have. In fact, they want people to shout their abortions. They're proud of it. They want to spread abortion. So, and they didn't do this in secret. They did this publicly. They're telling you, yeah, sure. We'll talk with you about abortion. And then they're telling them, yeah, well, don't worry, we're going to protect abortion. Like there's no reason to have been duped by that. None of this was done in secret. None of this was done privately. This was all public. And so it's very difficult for a lot of us to say that you actually got tricked. It seemed like you wanted to be tricked. You see, sometimes people that get scammed, they wanted to be scammed. And hopefully that's not you. And I think you should really, this could be a come to Jesus kind of moment for you. Like, you really can't be this naive and be a Christian if you really truly believe that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, that there's rebellion out there, that God has determined who should be in charge, what kinds of things they should be doing, stuff like that. Do you really believe it? You say you believe. Is God the King of Kings? Is Christ the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords? You say that, but do you act like it? You should reconsider. Here's what the letter continues. It says, we feel used and betrayed and have no intention of simply watching these kinds of efforts happen from the sidelines. Many evangelicals and Catholics took risks to support Biden publicly. President Joe Biden and Democrats need to honor their courage. We call on President Biden to honor his commitment to us and immediately demand that the House of Representatives apply the Hyde language to the American Relief Package. This is no time for radical change to long-standing abortion policy. Like here's the thing, again, you got to remember the context of this as well. Like, my argument last November when I was saying that Democrats should be excommunicated from the church, which I fully stand by, is that there is no redeeming quality. So, like, it would be one thing if the Democrats were great on everything, and then, they were bad on abortion. At least you could make some kind of an argument. I would still reject it, that you could say, okay, I support economic policy, but killing babies, we'll just trade. We'll just even Stevens. You get your killing babies, but I'll get my economic policy. I would still think that's a terrible choice for a Christian, a terrible trade. But at least I could understand the mentality. Look, I got all this list of great things. And there's just one black mark. It's this abortion thing. What do I do? And I could see making a utilitarian argument for that. I would reject it outright, but at least I could understand the logic. But the reality is, guys, that the American Recovery Act is an evil act. There's no redeeming quality here. The entire thing is horrible. But you see, the problem is when you're a social justice Christian, you get your mind so twisted up that these calculations make sense to you somehow. Where it's like, okay, if I just can get more money to black people, then it's okay that the Democrats also simultaneously kill tons of black people. Like that's the weird twisted logic that the Democrats want you to accept. And the problem is that so many social justice Christians are so naive that they do accept it. They somehow believe that Democrats are better on blacks and Latinos, even as they are killing blacks and Latinos like hotcakes. Don't be that naive. Brothers, there's no honor in being naive. In fact, it's a sin that you ought to repent of. Guys, there is no redeeming quality of the American Recovery Act. It's a horrible act. It's an ungodly act. And the whole thing should be rejected, not just because the Hyde Amendment. My goodness. Listen to the crumbs that these guys are willing to accept. Just the Hyde Amendment. We just don't want to pay for it. It's like, but what about the fact that it's happening? Like, isn't that bad enough? Well, social justice Christians cannot concern themselves with stuff like that, I guess. Here's a video. Justin Giboney. I don't believe this man. I think this man's a liar.
It was in many ways black.
Let's start this over again. Here we go.
It was in many ways black Christians who brought this administration in. And both our president and our vice president.
Yeah, definitely. Black Christians love Joe Biden. Black Christians voted for an evil man in office. There's just no question about it. There's no redeeming quality to Joe Biden's policy. There's no redeeming quality to Kamala Harris. None. And black Christians voted for him. So you guys have to own that now, I guess, because Justin Giboney says so. I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of black Christians who did not vote for Joe Biden, but Justin Giboney really, he's very invested in identifying black Christians with Joe Biden. That's like he loves that. He wants to own that. Let's hear what he has to say.
I think have a lot of potential. I think they can do a lot of good things, but they've done things in the past that aren't necessarily helpful to the church either.
So he thinks that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have a lot of potential, and where he gets this, why he says this, who knows? Because I look at their past. The best way to know what someone's going to do is to look at their past. I look at their past, and then I look at their words about what they were planning on doing, and there was no redeeming quality to any of it. I think we found one thing that was sort of a redeeming quality when we were reviewing their platforms and their policy speaking and stuff like that. We found one thing, and that was decriminalizing marijuana. That was the one thing that I was like, yeah, that's decent, but they get accidentally right. It's not, they don't even have the right reasons for it. It's just accidentally that I would agree with that. But he says that they have a lot of potential. What is he basing that on? There's no, what did they say that made you think that they were going to do something good? In fact, everything that they said in their official documents, in their words, in their previous actions is nothing but horror. And yet Justin over here, a Christian political correspondent, thinks that they have a lot of potential. Why? Well, God only knows, but the reality is that it's going to be a disaster. And Justin, I hope he owns this, that he backed a disaster. He backed someone that is trying to crush the church. Of course, they will never be able to do it, but Justin threw his support behind them and is proud that he did that.
I mean, if you go back and look at some of the Judiciary Committee hearings and how Kamala Harris talked to Christians who are trying to be judges, and what she said about their Christian convictions is not something that any of us should be happy about.
Yeah, lots of potential, though. I mean, obviously Christians can't hold any position of authority, according to Kamala Harris, because she's such in rebellion to Christ that she doesn't even understand that as a servant of God, she's a deacon of God as a minister, a civil governing authority, a magistrate. She has to do what God says. She doesn't even understand the basics of being a civil servant. Now, there's a lot of Republicans who don't understand the basics of that as well. But, again, the Republican Party, at least in my opinion, has a number of redeeming qualities that are right in line with the Scripture. The Democratic Party has zero, except marijuana decriminalization, which, again, they get accidentally wrong. Right. And by the way, Kamala Harris is horrible even on that. So if you look at even on that, she's horrible. But yeah, they have a lot of potential, even though she is in complete rebellion against Christ. What does that matter? I mean, I guess he's a
So
Christian.
we just have to be vigilant about that. We have, we should push them to take care of what I'm calling these disparity issues. These are the issues that most Black people were caring about. We're talking about disparities in healthcare. We're talking about disparities in education, in housing. These are the things that we want them to be focused on.
Right. So they were willing to trade lives for their own. So in other words, as long as I get stuff, as long as I get more stuff than I have today, then whatever, all this other stuff, killing babies, all this, whatever. As long as I get the stuff, I want stuff. And so they were willing to trade stuff for other people's lives and other people's justice for other people. That's not a trade a Christian ought to make. In fact, a Christian ought to be concerned with others more than their stuff. I've said this on YouTube many times, and I'll say it again. If I knew that I could end abortion, but my life would be a lot more difficult than it is right now. In other words, abortion will be criminalized. Obviously, you can't end it because people are gonna people would commit abortions even if it was illegal. Obviously, we know that. But I want justice for those people, those babies that are killed. If I knew that I could criminalize abortion, but I would have a hard time making a living, I would take that trade. And I would also argue that probably every Christian ought to take that trade. But Justin's over here saying, no, our communities need stuff. And that we know they're going to get the stuff for us. So, we sacrifice all this other stuff. We sacrifice even the meaning of being a civil magistrate before God so that we can get our stuff. That's not the way a Christian ought to engage in politics. Not at all.
And of course, when they handle COVID and all that stuff. We didn't put them in office to be just talking about some of these more kind of bourgeoisie progressive or elite progressive culture war issues. We didn't put you in there to have, no limits on abortion. We didn't put you in there to do these sweeping changes when it comes to gender and to make sure that biological men could play women's sports and all these other things. That's not what the people need. The people need job training. The people,
Yeah, again, none of this was done in secret. You knew that they were for all of these things, and you traded it. You said, yeah, whatever, all this other stuff, but we're going to get our stuff, and that's what we want. We want our stuff. So really, Justin's just lamenting here that they're not getting their stuff fast enough. It's not enough of a priority. And it's like, fine, you can have all your bourgeoisie progressive stuff, but we want to be first in line. See, Justin doesn't really care about that stuff. He just wants to be first in line to get his stuff. He wants stuff. Guys, if you were fooled by this charlatan on the screen, this man claims the name of Christ, but I don't think he's actually a believer. He doesn't understand the first thing about what it does mean to put others more important than yourselves and all of that kind of stuff. Like this is not someone you should have been fooled by. If you were fooled by Justin, okay, let's learn from that. I've been fooled by people before as well. It's not a good feeling, but you've got two options. You can be the ostrich, or you can learn from your mistakes and move on. Don't be fooled by someone like this ever again.
The people need help of eating and all of these things. That's what we want to focus on, housing included. So I would just really push Christians to focus in. Don't get too high or too low. Don't follow a politician too closely or think you always have to defend them. Hold them accountable. That's what this that's how this political game works. And if we're not willing to do that, we're not helping we're not hurting the other side. We're hurting ourselves. And so if we care about people, we're going to make sure not only Republicans do what they're supposed to do, but that Democrats do what they're supposed to do, because you never leave these folks to their own devices.
This is a slave speaking to other slaves. Don't be a slave, because if you actually want to help poor people that have hunger issues, housing issues, just money issues in general, a Christian ought to be looking at what does Christ say that I ought to do, right? And it's very, very simple. Justin wants to complicate it for you because Justin wants you to have a slave mentality the way he does. He wants you to be beholden to a political party, whether it's the Democrats, whether it's the Green Party, whether it's the Republicans. I want to free you from that, because a Christian should not be beholden to a political party in any way. I agree with him on that. But you see, his solution is all wrong. He said,
stay vigilant. Stay vigilant and hold them accountable, but definitely not at the voting booth. No, still definitely vote for them. Not that kind of accountability. But yeah, just stay vigilant.
no, that's not what Jesus said. What did Jesus say when somebody is struggling with food insecurity? There's a lot of people right now that struggle with food insecurity because of the COVID pandemic, right? Justin's like, yeah.
Support the bill, but then, hold them accountable, stay vigilant.
Here's what Christ says. If you have food, share it with somebody who doesn't. Chances are there are people right now in your local communities, and you can do this through your church, right? That's how we do it. Our church has people that they know that suffer from food insecurity, and our tithes go there, and people were providing for, they had a food pantry set up last March when the COVID thing first hit, where they had just food all the time in the church available for people. People would bring it and stuff like that. There's other kinds of institutions you can donate to. There's all kinds of stuff. If you have food, share it with someone who doesn't. This is not complicated stuff. If you have clothing, share it with somebody who doesn't. By the way, clothing. That's like, we can extrapolate that to housing, shelter, things like that. That's like the first line of defense when it comes to shelter, clothing. Share it with somebody who doesn't. That's what Christ says. So that's what Christians ought to be. Not to be holding politicians accountable to get them to do the work, right? That's passing the buck. That's passing the buck. And that's why you shouldn't have been fooled by this charlatan. He wants you as a Christian to think it's okay to pass the buck. When Jesus commands you to share food with somebody, it's okay to actually hire somebody else to do it for you. That's not okay. Not only is it not okay, but it actually doesn't help the way Christ intends you to help other people. You see, that's the thing. That's the ticket right here. This whole thing, this is crocodile. He was called.
Stay vigilant. Stay vigilant. And
wants his stuff. He wants his stuff. He wants us to prioritize his stuff over, the progressive things. Even knowing that's how they got elected. They were talking about all this progressive stuff. Of course they're doing that. It's not a surprise to anybody. Justin Giboney wants to pretend like he's surprised.
I can't believe it. We got to hold him accountable. It's like,
no. If you're a Christian, you take care of it. You've got food, share it with someone who doesn't. You've got shelter, share it with someone who doesn't. That's the way of a Christian. And so, guys, if you were fooled, I don't believe Justin is confused by this. I don't believe Justin is surprised by this. Not at all. He's a complete slave to the Democratic Party. And there's other people like him on the other side. So I'm not just saying that the Democrats have a plantation. Every political party has a plantation, right? If we just get our boys in office, then things will be good. No. You got to take responsibility for yourself. It's just that simple. So I don't believe Justin is fool. I don't believe that Richard Mao and Ron Sider were fooled either. This is just posturing, of course. But the reality is, though, that none of this is an excuse for you. None of this is an excuse. Even if you were fooled, whenever you're naive, there's no excuse for it. You should not have been fooled by these guys. They told you what they were going to do. Now they're doing it. And so you're responsible for putting them in office when they're doing exactly as they've said they would do. This doesn't work for Republicans, by the way, because Republicans often don't do what they say they're going to do, right? There are redeeming qualities to the Republican Party platform. We've talked about many of them over the life of this channel. There are good things about the Republican Party platform. So if you get fooled by the Republicans again and again and again, you should probably eventually stop getting fooled by them, but at least you can say, well, they're not doing what they said they would do, right? Trump was supposed to win the trade war. We have the worst trade deficit that we've ever had as a country, ever. He totally failed at that. Did he do it intentionally, or did he not ever intend to win the trade? Who knows? But it was a failure. There's no question about that. And so the next time Trump says he's going to win the trade war, I'm not going to believe it. I learned from my mistakes. It's just that simple. But anyway, so that's my point here, guys. Like, if you were fooled by Justin in the AND campaign, you were fooled by Richard Mao, I mean, you shouldn't have been, but you were. It's time to learn some hard lessons from that. It's time to go back to the scripture to decide what it is we support and what it is we don't support, because there's a lot of information there for that. I hope you found this video helpful. Guys, learn from your mistakes. God bless.